Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the principles of graphic design. Right, so the principles of graphic design are just basically the rules that make design work. Right, so like for example, in every facet of life, in different organizations, in schools, you have what we call rules and regulations. Right, in society, we have what we call it the constitution, the laws of the nation or the state. Right, so these are laws that you have to obey, okay, to be a good abiding citizen, or these are rules that you need to obey so that you don't face any consequences. All right, so like in design, we also have rules as well that we follow. All right, and that's what makes it design, because the difference between design and art is that in art there are no rules. You can do whatever you want and it will still be art. But in design, the moment you begin to disobey some of these rules, you no longer have a design, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. These rules are called the principles of graphic design. All right, and I'm going to be discussing about 7 of them today. All right, so they are very important, and make sure you stay up until the end of this video to catch all that I have to say. Also, I've also dropped another video about the elements of graphic design. All right, so do well to click the link above and you're going to see it. All right, because it's a very helpful video. It's also going to show you what the elements are. Elements are basically like the building blocks of graphic design. All right, so graphic design is made up of certain things. If you'd like to know what those building blocks are, click on that link and watch the video. So without talking too much, let's get right into the video. All right, so the first principle of design I'm going to be talking about is called balance. Right, balance is the distribution of visual weight in a design. The distribution of visual weight, we call it visual weight because when looking at a design, you cannot weigh it with your hand, right? You can't get the physical weight of a design. It's not possible. So we call it visual weight because we use our eyes to determine the weight, right? So balance is the distribution of that weight. That's what balance is. So if you have too much visual weight on one side of the flyer and the other side is not balanced. All right, balance makes a composition feel stable and organized. It makes a composition feel stable and organized, right? So if you look at this image, I don't know if I should call it an image, that I put on the right hand side here, you're going to see that line represents like the middle, right? And you can see at the top you have a big yellow circle and a small black circle, and at the bottom you have another big yellow circle and a small black circle. So because it is in both the top and the bottom, it is balanced. I don't know if you understand. Visually, if you look at it, it is balanced. All right, so that's what balance is. Now we have different types of balance. All right, we have symmetrical balance, which is basically when there's equality on both sides. Right, so if you take a look at this image, I got this image from designer Anopam, by the way. All right, so if you take a look at this image, you see that this is symmetrical balance, right? Similar to what I showed in the original slide, right? You can see the circle on both the left and the right, both the big circle and the small circle, right? So because it's identical, we call it what? Symmetrical balance. It creates a kind of like a mirror-like effect, right? So that's what symmetrical balance is. Another type of balance that we have is called asymmetrical balance, right? So asymmetrical balance is that instead of it to be like a mirror image, it can be like different, but it still looks balanced. I don't know if you understand. For example, if you look at this image, you can see one big circle, right? One big circle. If it was to be symmetrical balance, what we have on the right hand side, you would have another big circle. All right, but asymmetrical balance, instead of one big circle, you now have 3 small circles making up for that one big circle, right? So they don't look the same, but yet it's still balanced, right? It's still balanced. For example, now if we talk about actual weight, this is visual weight we're talking about, but let's bring it to like real life weight. Okay, so if we have a a watermelon that weighs 50 kilogram. Of course, there's no there's no watermelon that weighs 50 kilogram, but just stick with me. If you have a watermelon that weighs 50 kilograms, and if you want to balance it, let's say you wanted to balance it on a scale, there's this type of scale that I've forgotten what it's called, but when you put something on one pan, you have to put something else on the other pan to make sure that it's balanced. I think you guys will understand what I'm saying. I hope maybe I'll find an image and show it in this video, but if I don't, I hope you get what I'm saying. All right, so imagine that type of scale and you put a watermelon on one side. To balance it, what do you have to do? If to balance it asymmetrically, what will you have to do? You have to put another watermelon that is also weighing 50 kilogram on the other side. That's asymmetrical balance. But if you wanted to balance that same watermelon, that's symmetrical balance. But if you wanted to balance that same watermelon asymmetrically, when you have your watermelon of 50 kg, you can now have, like, let's say 5 apples that are 10 kg each. 5 of them will lead to that same 50 kg, so they will end up being balanced. That's asymmetrical balance. Alright, so I hope you get what I'm saying. Now the third type of balance is called radial balance. Alright, a radial balance, you have your elements arranged around the central points, which creates some kind of harmony. Right, the composition in radial balance is usually circular or spiral, right, and all the elements are spaced evenly around the center. Alright, so you can see the image that is showing on your screen, and that is usually what radial balance looks like. Alright, so most of the time you might not really see a lot of radial balance in designs, but you definitely see. But usually what is more common is symmetrical and asymmetrical balance. Alright, now if you take a look at this flyer, you're going to see balance. Right, if you split this flyer into two, left and right, you see that it is balanced properly. Okay, now is it symmetrical balance or asymmetrical balance? It is asymmetrical balance. Why? Because the left and right side are not identical. They are not identical, but yet they are still balanced. Alright, so this is a perfect example of asymmetrical balance. Alright, so the next design principle I'm going to be talking about is called contrast. Alright, so contrast is the difference in color, size, shape, or typography that creates visual interest. The difference in color, size, shape, or typography that creates visual interest. Contrast is the difference between design elements that make them stand out. That's the simple definition. Alright, so whenever you think of contrast, I want you to think of difference. What makes these two elements different? That's contrast. What makes two elements different? That's contrast. If you look at the image I put on the right hand side, you'll see contrast. I generated contrast in two ways. Number one, I generated in three ways. The first way is with size. Contrast with size. If you look, the yellow square is bigger than the black circle. That is contrast with size. Secondly is contrast with shape. The yellow shape is square, while the black shape is circle. That is contrast with shape. So I put two different shapes. Now the third contrast is contrast with color. One is black and one is yellow. So you can see how I've differentiated between two elements in three different ways: different shapes, different colors, and different sizes. That is what contrast is: the difference between two elements, making one element stand out or making both of them stand out because they are different. If I had put two circles there, it will not create as much visual interest as these two elements that I put here. If it was two black circles or two yellow squares, it might not be that interesting. But now that I'll put a yellow square and a black circle with different sizes, you can see that it's more interesting and it will draw your eye to it. Right, so that's what contrast is. Strong contrast draws attention, it improves reliability and adds visual interest, while low contrast can make a design feel flat or hard to understand. This is very important. Alright, so for example, if you look at your screen, you're going to see that the background is what? The background is white, but the text on top of the background is what color? Is black. That is contrast. Imagine if the text was a bright color. there will be no proper contrast, right? Because white is already the brightest color, and if you have another bright color on top of the white, you will not have proper contrast, and that will lead to difficulty in legibility and readability of the text. So you can see how contrast is very important for us to even read something as simple as text. All right, so that's why contrast is important. If you look at this flyer now, you're going to see contrast. If you look at the headline, meet tutorial, yes, they might be the same size, but they are different what? They are different colors. So I've created contrast with colors. Now you can also differentiate the headline from the subtext. How? Because the headline is bigger than the subtext. Also, we can also differentiate. So that is contrast through size. Alright. You can also differentiate it through typography. So for the headline, I use bold, but for the subtext, I use regular. So that's contrast through typography. So you can see how I've successfully used contrast to make this design more interesting, more visually interesting. Imagine if every text there was the same size and the same color. You will not want to read it. It will be difficult to read. It will be difficult to process the information. Alright, so see how contrast is important. Also, you can see the color of the background compared to the color of the text on top of it. That is contrast. Compared to the color of the shapes on top of it. That is contrast. Alright, so you can see how contrast is playing an important role. If you go down to the shapes at the bottom, you can see the color of the text on top of the shape versus the color of the shape itself. That is contrast. Alright, so I hope you are beginning to see how contrast plays a role in everyday design. The next design the next design principle I'll be talking about is called emphasis. Emphasis is about making one element stand out as the focal point in a design. When there's a particular thing that you want to be the focal point in design, you have to make it stand out, and you do that by creating emphasis. Emphasis directs the viewer's attention to the most important parts, such as the headline, the call to action button, or key image. Designers create emphasis using contrast, size, color, placement, or unique style. Right, so if you look at the image that I did on the right hand side, you can see how I use emphasis. Where does your eye go to? It goes to the yellow circle, doesn't it? Why? Because everything else is a black square, but because of the way I use contrast in what? Contrast in color, contrast in shape. Do you understand? I have now directed your eyes towards that yellow circle. Also, the unique placement, I placed it right in the middle. Alright, even if it was not in the middle, your eye will still be drawn to that yellow circle because it's surrounded by black squares. So that's how you create emphasis. Do you get? That's how you create emphasis in a flyer. Now if you look at this design, I kind of created emphasis in the call to action. Right, I created emphasis in the call to action at the bottom. Right, so if you look at that blue footer at the bottom, you'll see phone number, you'll see Instagram handle, and you'll see website. But because this is a logistics company and they handle their bookings on their website, so I wanted to draw attention to their website. So instead of just placing it on top of the blue footer like I did with the phone number and the Instagram handle, what I did instead was to put the websites on top of a yellow button to kind of create emphasis and to draw attention. Alright, I don't know if I'm making sense. So that's how I kind of made emphasis to that point. So you can see how emphasis can play an important role in drawing the viewer's eye to an important detail in your flyer. The next thing I'm going to talk about is called hierarchy. Alright, so hierarchy is the arrangement of elements to show importance and to guide the viewer's eye. Hierarchy is the arrangement of elements to show importance and to guide the viewer's eye. Hierarchy is one of the most important elements. Why do I keep on saying elements? Hierarchy is one of the most important principles of graphic design. It is the arrangement of elements to show their order of importance. It guides the viewer's eye, starting with the most important element and moving down to the supporting details. Designers can create hierarchy through size, color, contrast, spacing, and placement. For example, a bold headline at the top followed by a smaller subheading and body text. Alright, so if you look at the image on the right hand side, you can see I kind of demonstrated hierarchy. So first of all, I have a very big black rectangle. So you can imagine the rectangle to be like a headline. Where will your eyes go first? It will go to the biggest thing there. So that's how hierarchy is in play. You make the most important thing to be the biggest to draw people's eyes to it quickly. Do you understand? Now, after your headline, what do you have? You have your subtext. So imagine the yellow rectangle and the black rectangle under is now the subtext. Okay, it's not as big as the first one, but it is big enough to still draw attention. Now, the smallest ones there are your body texts. Yeah, so you can see how, because of the sizing and the placement, it has guided our eyes from the most important to the supporting detail. That's what hierarchy does. If you take a look at this flyer now, if you take a look at this flyer, you'll see what's the first thing your eye sees is this container. Is this container, and that is intentional because this container kind of passes the message that I want. Is this container is going to create visual interest. Once you see it, you'll be wondering what is the essence of this container? Why did I place it here? What is the story that I'm trying to tell? You'll be intrigued and you want to find out more. And the next place your eye will go to is where? Is to the headline. And you read it. We won't leave you hanging. Your package will arrive on time. Okay? And it now makes sense why I put a container hanging. The container is hanging in midair, and I also made sure that I highlighted the word hanging and arrive on time. Okay, which is contrast and emphasis. Alright, I highlighted it to now make sense of the image. So the headline has made sense of the image. So now you will now be wondering what is the extra information that I'm giving. You now go down to the subtext. No delays, no story, just reliable delivery you can trust. You can see how hierarchy has guided the viewer's eye from the image to the headline to the subtext, and then finally they will go to the call to action. They will see the website or the Instagram or the phone number, and if they're interested they will take action. Alright, so you can see how the flyer is not just me grabbing random elements and colors, and you can see the thought process behind it. Right, this is the importance of the principles of graphic design. So the next principle I'm going to be talking about is called alignment. So alignment is simply positioning elements so that they line up properly, creating order and professionalism. To be honest, for me, alignment is like one of the simplest, if not the simplest design principle. Alignment is the simplest, one of the simplest, if not the simplest design principle. Right? So alignment is simply just arranging your elements properly. Right? So there are different types of alignments. We have left alignment, right alignment, center alignment. These are the three most common ones. Right? So if you look at the images on the right hand side, you can see first of all left alignment. That is one of the most common alignments, right? Because you arrange your elements, your text from the left hand side of the flyer to the right hand side of the flyer, because we write from left to right, so it's very common. We also have right alignment, which is the opposite of left alignment, arranging your elements from right to left, right? And then we have center alignment, which is arranging your elements in the center of the flyer or the design. Do you understand? Right. Proper alignment creates order, connection, and professionalism in a design. Proper alignment creates order, connection, and professionalism in a design. The thing about alignment is that when you do it properly, nobody notices it. Right? You're not going to get any, like if you do a design and you post it, nobody's going to tell you, oh, your alignment is very good. You'll never hear that. But the moment your alignment is not good, everybody can see it. Alignment is something that is so easy to spot. Like if you learn design today, you can, and somebody sends you their work to correct, alignment is something that a beginner will easily see. Oh, your alignment is off. Even people that know nothing about design can spot alignment. So that's how important it is. Something you cannot get wrong, because once you get it wrong, it makes your work look unprofessional, right? So I'm going to be showing you how alignment is used in real life flyer. So if you take a look at this flyer, what alignment model is this? This is left alignment. You can see how I arrange the text from left to right, and you can see how everything is on a straight line. Everything starts at the same line. Alright, so that's left alignment. If you take a look at this is what we call center alignment. Center alignment. Everything is positioned in the middle. It's positioned what? In the middle. From the logo to the headline to the icons to the house image to the call to action, everything is in the center of the flyer. This is a perfect example of center alignment. Also, by the way, I have a tutorial for this particular flyer, so if you're interested, and just click the link on the right hand side, and I showed you how I designed this step by step, and I also shared all the resources I use for this particular video in the description box of that video, right? So you don't want to miss it. Right there, now this flyer is actually a little bit somewhat of an example of right alignment, but just pay attention to the headline alone. So if you look at that headline, you'll see that the text is being written from right to left. From right to left. So that is an example of right alignment. So the next principle we're going to be discussing is called repetition. Repetition is simply reusing styles, colors, or shapes to create unity and consistency. Styles, colors, or shapes to create unity and consistency. Repetition is the reuse of visual elements like colors, shapes, and fonts or patterns throughout a design. It creates consistency, strengthens unity, and makes designs more recognizable. Brands often use repetition in their logo, typography, and color schemes to build a strong, memorable identity. Alright, so repetition is basically, as the name implies, just repeating the same design elements to kind of give a cohesive look, to kind of make your brand more memorable. Because imagine if I use blue today, and tomorrow I use blue, and next tomorrow I use blue, and the next week blue, the chances of you remembering me will be high, won't it? Because I keep on using the same color. But imagine if my brand is using a bunch of different colors, the chances of you forgetting me is different. Like if you even think about it in a real scenario, if there are a bunch of different people passing your house every morning, what are the chances of you remembering those people? Very low. But if the same man walks past your house every single day, you're going to remember him. Why? Repetition. Repetition. So using the same colors, the same patterns, the same fonts, the same brand assets over and over and over makes your brand more memorable, and that's the importance of repetition. Right? So if you take a look at this, you're going to see a bunch of flyers that I did for a brand. And what do you notice? You're noticing that the colors are the same, they are similar colors, the font is the same. So that's what we call repetition. Alright, it's making the brand look memorable because we are repeating certain elements. That's a repetition at play. So the next element of design we are going to talk about is called white space or negative space. White space or negative space is the empty areas that give breathing room and make designs feel uncluttered. White space is that area around or between design elements. It does not have to be white, it simply means unused space. So this is actually a mistake a lot of newbies make. When they hear the word white space, they think it's when you have a white background. No, it does not matter what the color of the background is. It is just talking about the space around the particular design that gives that design breathing space. Alright, proper use of white space can give design breathing room and improve readability and draws attention to the main elements. Without white space, designs can feel cluttered and overwhelming. So you can see even this thing you're reading right now, yeah, you can see how I give white space. You can see the space between all the different points. You can see the space between the headline and the first point and the second point, third point. You can see the space between my name at the top left and the yellow and black rectangles at the top right. Like that's what we call white space, giving elements in a design space so that you can read easily, so that there's a breathing room. Alright, if you look at this flyer now, you can see that it's easy to understand the information on this flyer. Why? Because there's proper white space. There's white space at the edges, on the left and on the right. there's enough white space, the elements are not cluttered. Right, if you look at this one as well, there's also white space on it, proper white space. The headline, the subtext, everything has enough space between each other such that we can read it and understand easily. All right, so this is the importance of white space in a design. All right, this is the importance of white space in a design. Now finally, to recap, we talked about 7 principles of design. We talked about balance, contrast, emphasis, hierarchy, alignment, repetition, and white space. All right, so I hope at this point you've learned one or two things about the elements of graphic design. All right, and I hope that after this video you'll be able to design more intentionally with this understanding. All right, so if you watch up to this point, it means you're an OG. I'd like to thank you so much. Thank you for watching. I also like you to like this video if you got to value from it. Drop a comment, tell me what you learned. Share this video to that designer friend that you think will need this video, and of course subscribe to this channel because I'll be dropping more hot amazing content. And of course, click the video appearing on your screen to watch the principles of, sorry, not the principles, graphic design elements, the elements of graphic design, because it's not enough to know the principles. You need to understand the building blocks of graphic design. What are the building materials that we use to make a design? All right, so I'll catch you in the next video. All right, thank you for watching. Love and light. Adios.